the Grad Guys Podcast, the show that demystifies the competency-based interview process and settles interview anxiety by providing you with direction, guidance and support so you can interview with confidence. Hey there, and welcome to the Grad Guys Podcast. This is episode 3, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking all about mindfulness and how this relates to you when you're going for a job interview. As ever, my name is Ash, and I am one half of the Grad Guys. I'm also here with my co-host and colleague, Pete. Pete, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, having a good weekend. It's all good.
Awesome. Looking forward to this chat. It should be quite an interesting one. So yeah, mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Well, I guess if we're keeping it brief, it's all about keeping your mind relaxed and balanced so you can function at your best, particularly, in this instance, we're talking about interviewing. As we all know, we've experienced over the last couple of years, we're living in a very stressful world. And I think more and more people nowadays are starting to realize the benefits that mindfulness can offer. Would you say that's true, Pete?
Yeah, definitely. I think mindfulness is a growing. People realizing the benefits of mindfulness. It's a real growing thing that's happening in the world, because I think more and more people are turning on to how it can benefit you and improve your life. I know a lot of people are going to be wondering, what does mindfulness have to do with interview? Well, Ash, as you know, one of the biggest things we found in our experience with interviewing, we've interviewed loads of people, we've been through loads of interviews ourselves, is that anxiety around interview and interview nerves are one of the biggest problems graduates face, and it can really stifle people in interview. We've both seen lots of good people who are probably the right candidate for the job fail because they've been too nervous at interview. Being nervous at interview, it's natural, but when it becomes overwhelming, it can stop people getting their dream job. And two of the most important things for overcoming interview nerves are having a relaxed mind along with sufficient preparation before the interview. Yeah, we've both seen it, haven't we? It is a real problem for some people.
Too many times, and I think if people spent as much time as they put into the preparation around the interview responses and the answers they're coming up with, if they put the same amount of preparation into establishing the right mindset and getting the right mindset for things, I think people would perform a lot better in interview. And I think it's quite an underrated technique, really, for interview success, as you've mentioned. For me, one of the key things that I've found through mindfulness and looking at it more is sort of the link between the brain, your mind, and then how that affects your body and the behavior you have in interview as well. I don't think people realize that, without getting too scientific behind this, but, if you're thinking negative thoughts and you're starting to worry and you're feeling anxious, that's then going to, release a load of chemicals in your body that are going to make you more anxious and stressed out. And, then as a reaction of that, you're going to start physically showing that, aren't you? Your nervousness is going to come across in an interview. So it's quite important that we understand how powerful the mind is and how it can really affect you physically in an interview, and ultimately the success you're going to have in that interview. Some of the ways things manifest in interview, like the physical side of interview anxiety and nervousness, that mindfulness can help with, I guess, is that those feelings that we've all had in interview. I've been in interviews where you get that kind of like the butterflies in your stomach, you feel a bit sick. For me personally, without getting too graphic, before embracing mindfulness and understanding how important it was and how useful it is to helping you prep for your interview, I used to be running to the toilet every 5 minutes. I would literally be getting the nervous shits, it's which is not a nice thing to have. But on a serious note, that can really affect you in an interview.
Yeah.
What sort of before we move on, is there any sort of physical manifestations of interview nerves or anxiety you've had that I'm sure the listener out there is going to be experiencing as well, or had experience with?
For me, feeling sick was the one. I've thrown up on a platform of a tube before, just like going to a job interview. Just I don't know what it is, but like the nerves always go to my stomach, and like, and it makes me feel sick. Like the thought of the like when I used to have to do these things before embracing that mindfulness, like that, it would just make me feel sick. Like, and I've vomited in some very interesting places, and had to try and disguise it in my finest suit, making sure I didn't get any splashback.
I mean that's a skill in itself. Obviously, you don't want to be using that as one of your interviews.
No.
It does show quite an innovative way of dealing with things.
Yeah, I mean, I got quite good at it, but obviously, it was a difficult one. I think trembling as well. I think like, you know, like an interview when someone hands you that bit of paper with some interview directions on, or like information about the company you're going for, and you can barely take it out of someone's hand.
Or the water, you know, you've got the glass of water, you're trying to give yourself a few extra seconds of thinking time, and you know the water's shaking everywhere, it's going all over your clothes, and you can't control it. I mean,
it's like Jurassic Park with the T-Rex and the water shaking. That's what it's like, isn't it? Like
it's not good. It's not good. Yeah, dry mouth as well is another one, isn't it? Which then sends you to wanting the water. So it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I mean that one. I think I mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts. I remember someone asking me a question. I just couldn't answer it. I was like, I hadn't done sufficient preparation, but that combined with the nerves was just like, it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrible. Yeah, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I've had like, you know, feeling really sweaty and hot. I mean, even you could have an interview in the middle of winter, you know, but your body's reacting. You're so stressed out by it that you know, your heart rate's increasing. You're getting sweaty palms. You're getting really sweaty and hot and flustered, and it's just recognizing that this stuff happens, and that mindfulness is one really sort of simple, in effect, way that you can help reduce that. And I don't think many people have really tapped into that and understand how useful mindfulness can be when preparing for an interview.
Yeah, definitely.
So Pete, have you got any personal experiences where, you know, maybe you hadn't embraced mindfulness, and then an experience of that interview, and then in times when you have, and sort of how you found it, how it helped, things like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think I've always had problems with anxiety, just sort of generally, and I think interview is certainly one of the things. Before I found mindfulness, that I used to struggle with. It was just the whole process with, you know, you'd be thinking the night before, like, this is all going to go wrong. Everything in my life hinges on this interview. So we just ramp it up to really like unmanageable levels, unhealthy levels, should we say. And I wanted to make a change. So I started looking at mindfulness, and it really did help me. A few simple exercises like changed my life. And I'm not being melodramatic when I say that. It really did help me sleep better, help me calm down. And when those inner thoughts, and I think we can all relate to this, you know, like you have those like worst case scenario thoughts that everything is going to go wrong, like everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And mindfulness really helped me manage those thoughts and manage my self-talk. It really did. And particularly in interview, because I think interview is like it's like a fork in the road, isn't it? Like it can really turn your life one way or another. And that is a nervous thought, isn't it? Really, like it's like it can take you from it will change your world. Like when you get that job, that dream job that you want, or you don't get it, it can really affect you and change your world. And that's why, I mean, like for me personally, that's why I think the whole nerves, the nerves sort of built up and made it very difficult at times. But I think, like one of the kind of changes that I made for me with mindfulness was changing my self-talk, that negative self-talk that we can sometimes go through in our head. And I mean, I used to put myself under immense amounts of pressure with interviews. It was like, I must, and I think about these words here that I'm saying, this is what I'd say to myself: I must succeed at this interview or my life will be a failure. So we're putting a lot on this interview here. Everything will be bad. And and like everything will go wrong. So those are the sort of things I would say to myself. And like one of the kind of exercises that mindfulness teaches you is about being careful about what you say to yourself. I mean, you wouldn't ever say that to a friend or relative. Like, if you fail at this interview, your life is going to be destroyed. So why would you say it to yourself? And I think we like that's one of the ways. It's just one of the sort of many ways that mindfulness can help. So I changed mine to, instead of like, I must succeed in this interview, it'll be like, I was like, it would be great to succeed in this interview. I want to succeed in this interview. But if I don't, it's a chance to learn and grow. Like you can still, there's always another interview. And that helped really relax me, that I was more successful. So,
I love that. I think that's such a great way of looking at it. It's kind of like, well, look, yeah, I want to get that job. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to do everything I can to get that. But look, the world's not going to end if I don't get it. Let's look at the positives of it. I can learn from this. I can develop. And then, if I don't get it, it is what it is. Next time around, I'm going to smash it because I now know what I've got to do.
Exactly.
Would you say that negative self-talk, the way around that is to kind of look at what your negative thoughts are and then kind of be overt with trying to replace them with more positive ones? So
definitely. I
mean, one thing I've done is kind of make a list before of things that, literally simple line in the middle, things that I'm thinking negatively about. How do I turn it into a positive? Is that I think that's something that could work quite well for people out there.
I think that's a very powerful thing to do. I think addressing, like, really thinking about what you're saying to yourself, and like you say, and then making a real sort of key, like making positive steps to change that is really powerful. And I think people will really benefit from it. I mean, I think if I'd have known that, and in the first interviews I went through, I think I wouldn't have felt under so much pressure, and I really would have performed better.
I think it's something, definitely. It's something as simple as saying, like, if in your head you're constantly saying, oh, I'm really crap at interviews. I'm so crap at interviews. I'm going to fail. It's like just replacing it, isn't it, with something like, I can succeed. I can be good at this interview, and I will succeed as long as I put time, effort, and preparation into it. And then having that little positive spin on it, if you keep repeating that, and I think it's really important to stress the need to kind of like train your brain and repeat these positive, affirmations that you're giving yourself, the positive self-talk. It's important to keep doing that, isn't it? It's almost like, if you were training for a marathon or something, you're going to keep up momentum, aren't you? And you need to do the same with any kind of mindfulness as well. It's almost like training for your mind and your brain. So replacing those negative self-talk with the positive ones and keep that momentum going, keep at it, so that eventually, I guess, your subconscious takes it on board and you start to manifest that physically and then ultimately in your interview.
And I think you made a great point there about writing it down as well. Writing things down is very, very powerful because it's a physical way of clearly animating your thoughts. And I think it's very powerful. You can take that and stick it on your bathroom mirror. You can stick it on your wall when you go to bed, and you can read that and look at it. And it really does. And I know a lot of people will be going, oh, well, it's very difficult. Yeah, it's difficult, but it does work, and it really does work. And I won't make any bones about it. It did change my life, sort of changing that self-talk and being aware of it and actually kind of thinking about it more. I mean, there's lots of great resources out there for mindfulness nowadays, like Calm, Headspace. You can get all sorts of brilliant exercises, breathing exercises that take the edge off of your interview anxiety. You can get meditations as well. Again, we're great believers in meditations, and you might be thinking, oh, meditation, what's that all about? But meditation is actually just a simple way of clearing your mind, bringing it back to kind of a base level, and allowing you to relax and perform at your best. Because when we relax in the interview, we can actually, we're open to so much more. You can remember your preparation better. If you're constantly stressed, it's going to put pressure on remembering those examples that we've done in your STAR model. and when someone asks you a question, if you're completely stressed and nervous, it's very difficult to actually sort of take in what they're saying. Whereas if you're calm and relaxed,
well, your brain shuts down, doesn't it, Pete?
Yeah.
So your brain shuts down, and you know there is science behind it without going too much aside. But your brain will shut down, and you almost come back to that sort of caveman fight or flight response, and you're really struggling to go back. You know, your cognitive functions are heavily reduced, and you can't pick out that information, all that prep you've done. You know, and all those answers you've sort of pre-prepared and you've been planning and going over and practicing, you just can't pick that out. It's almost like like you're trying to load up a computer and the file's corrupted. You can't get it out because you're so nervous, you're so anxious, you're so worried and stressed, and it's using mindfulness to reduce that. So on the day of the races, come that day of the interview, you can perform the best you can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the last interview I did myself, I did a 15-minute meditation half an hour before the interview, and that took the edge off of my interview nerves, and it allowed me to really control that nervous energy and be much more relaxed throughout the interview. So I say this from a point of like, I've been there, I've done this myself, as you have, Ash, as well, and use these techniques to just take the edge off these nerves. So you can when someone asks you a question in an interview, you're not going to give them a panicked response. You're going to give them a calm, considered response. That is what you want. And that is what comes across so well in interview. I mean, I'm sure you've had experiences with it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've personally, for me, I can almost think in my head of times when prior to using mindfulness, preparing for an interview or anything, if you've got a presentation you're giving, or you've got a meeting with, a load of bosses or whatever it is, something that's going to cause you anxiety or nervousness. Obviously, in this case, we're talking about interview, but I can definitely see the difference and the change in pre-using mindfulness and sort of post after using it, and the difference in how I come across. I mean, a big thing for me is I always struggled with the whole night before thing. So, I mean, I struggle to sleep sometimes anyway. Got a very overreactive imagination, and my brain's always, ticking. It's quite hard to switch off sometimes. But mindfulness has really helped. Like you were saying, like the meditations that are out there and things like that. There's some really good meditations there to help you sleep. And the last interview I did, I made sure that I was on the build up, obviously doing my preparation, everything we speak about, but making sure I was eating healthy, doing some physical training as well, going out for runs and things like that. But also getting enough sleep is really important as well.
Definitely.
You need that time to unwind, to chill out, to recharge your batteries. But I was using mindfulness and meditation to help with that. So make sure you go to bed at a good time, spend a bit of time having that meditation, forgetting about everything else, almost taking your mind away from the interview itself. And it gives you that focus, doesn't it? If you're focusing on meditation, all the other thoughts just go out the window, and I really would advise if you've not tried it, give it a go. All right. A lot of people think it's some woo-woo thing and you've got to sit on a yoga mat. And they said Yoda then. I mean, Yoda.
Or a Yoda mat, yeah.
Yeah, obviously he was a complete oracle. Yoda would have been well up for this. But yeah, people think it's some woo thing where you've got to sit on a yoga mat and pray to the sun gods or whatever. And if that works for you, that's great. Like whatever works for you. But look, we're just saying there's some simple techniques out there. It does work. Give it a go, and it will change your outlook on how you look at the interview and how you prepare for it, and ultimately how you succeed. I mean, I can share. I had an interview where I didn't use it. And this is quite a few years back now. I was going for a temporary role. I've been doing the role for a while. And I stupidly, I was quite young back then, thought, oh, I've got this. It's in the bag. I've been doing it for 6 months. Like, how hard can it be? I'm doing it anyway. Surely they're just going to want to keep me doing it. I'll just wing it. No, that's the first thing. You can't wing these things. As we know, you've got to prepare. As we keep saying, prepare. So I didn't prepare. And then secondly, I was doing different shifts and working different hours and all that, and it was affecting my health and my all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't getting proper sleep and all that, and I wasn't prepping, I wasn't getting the right sleep, and I wasn't mentally preparing as well, or physically prepared for it. And completely flunked the interview. Went in there just really arrogant. I thought I was going to get it because I've been doing it, and it was quite apparent within a couple of minutes of being in there and having these questions thrown at me. I was like, oh, shit, I haven't really prepared for this very well.
Yeah.
And then it suddenly dawns on you. And then that's when you start to shut down. That's when the nervousness kicks in because you're not prepared.
Yeah.
And also because I hadn't sorted out my mindset, you know, I was tired, I was fatigued. I hadn't sorted out the mindset side of it. And that also then started to impact me. And all those physical manifestations we spoke about at the start, you know, the trembling, the nervousness, the dry mouth and all that all came through.
Yeah.
So that was a really good experience for me because I never wanted to feel like that again in an interview. So now when I'm preparing for an interview, you know, well in advance, I'm doing all the prep around the STAR method and everything we spoke about in the previous episode. You know, I'm getting prepped mentally, I'm getting prepped physically, I'm eating well, getting good sleep. And, you know, the meditation's really helped for me. But ultimately, it's what works for you. And I think it's an individual, personal thing, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think it's whatever you got to do to reduce that kind of we will give you tools and we'll give you tips and you take whichever ones work for you. There isn't like a kind of hard and fast rules what works, but for you, but it is very much an individual thing. We will give you a toolkit and we will discuss sort of tips, but you take what works for you. And I'm very much a believer in that. And I really like what you're saying about the health and well-being as well. I mean, I really believe in that as well. It will just generally, as well as the mindfulness exercises, if you go for like, if you incorporate like in your interview preparation, have a break, man. Have a break. Don't sit there trying to learn and revise everything like that we're going to talk about more podcasts about prepping and learning the sort of company's values and mission statement, etc. But remember, have a break within that. It needs to be. You
can overdo it quite easily.
You can overdo it, yeah. And you don't want to. You don't want to turn up to your interview all burnt out, like Ash has spoken about getting the sleep. Really important, and other physiological things as well, about watching how much caffeine you have before an interview as well. You do not want to be rattling around by having 10 espresso shots and before your interview, because it does affect your physiology and little things like that. And making sure you eat breakfast in the morning. You don't want to be turned out, your blood sugar low, because that all starts piling on and not helping with that anxiety. You want to, all these things you need to consider. It's little things that will give you the edge in interview, and
they're all linked. They're all linked, aren't they?
It's all linked.
And people neglect that. They focus, rightly so, on all the prep and getting their answers and everything right. But I think it's really important to stress again, as we've already said, but it's worth stressing. It's why it's so important, why we're doing the podcast. Getting the mindset right and focusing on mindfulness is just as important as preparing for the interview. Doing your STAR method, getting your example is just as important, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, we've both seen too many good people, and I always say this: we've seen too many good people not get the jobs they deserve because they're too nervous at interview. And it's a real shame. I've interviewed candidates and I can see that they're trying to get out the information they want, but that they just can't get it out because they're too nervous. And it's really quite upsetting to me, because I know they'd probably be quite good. And as well, I've been there. I'm like, I know I will be good for this job and I know I'll give it 100%, but I just cannot get it out because I've been too nervous in the past. And I think it's a real shame. And that's why, though, if you embrace these techniques and give them a go and work on this element of your preparation as well, it just will give you that edge in an interview over other people that don't do this.
Undoubtedly. I 100% agree with that. You know, like you say, we've both been there. We've experienced ourselves personally. We've definitely seen it in candidates we've interviewed and colleagues that have interviewed as well. And ultimately, it's why we do what we do here. It's what we do. It's why we created the Grad Guys and what we do. We want to help people that are experiencing that interview anxiety and that nervousness and struggling with the interview. Because there's so many good, and people listening to this, they'll have the skills, they'll have the experience, they'll undoubtedly be able to do the job. It's just getting past that interview stage, and the nerves and the anxiety can really, stunt your progress and stop you from performing as well in the interview. So this is just one of those little things, like you were saying, another tool in the toolbox that you can pick out and use to get to where you need to be and get that dream job.
Definitely.
I mean, some of the things that we've spoke about, I think we've sort of mentioned it already, but just a couple of things I thought is worth mentioning. We've mentioned sort of like breathing exercises, meditation, physical exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep and stuff like that. But there's definite benefit in, practicing as well, isn't there? We've spoke about the interview prep with the STAR method and all that, but also as part of your mindfulness, having a routine, I think, is really important as well.
Definitely.
Getting a routine and then putting your practice in and your rehearsing around that, whether it's you practice in front of a mirror, you interview examples, or you use a video camera and then, you look back and stuff like that. And if you can get some practice, maybe get mock interviews or something we potentially can help with, practice with friends or family as well. That's also going to help your mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely 100% right about having a routine. Like, I think especially guys, if we've left university and I know from personal experience, like sometimes you don't have a lot of lectures going on. And I think in my last year of university, I had 3 lectures a week. I was like, what am I going to do with all this time in between partying and everything? And it's like, I've got all this time. I need to do my studies. I need to do this. So I did put in a bit of a timetable where I'd go study between these times, and the rest of the time is my own. And you do have to. Nothing good gets done without a kind of disciplined approach. You've got to structure your time so that you are getting that preparation in. I think that's a really good point about just getting that structure in place. So when you are doing your preparation, you put in time for your mindfulness. You put in time to go for a walk or a run or a swim to get that energy going and to get yourself prepared for that interview.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people sometimes misinterpret what mindfulness is. Obviously, there are the more common things you'd associate with mindfulness, like we've mentioned, physical exercise, meditation, eating well, that kind of stuff. But it could be something as simple as taking your dog for a walk or reading a book that's got nothing to do with, just taking your mind away, allowing your mind to go somewhere else, isn't it? Just so you don't, you've got to focus elsewhere. So you're not constantly focused on just the interview, because it can be overbearing and overwhelming. And it's important to take time out away from that and give your brain a chance to sort of just chill out, because your subconscious is still going to have the interview stuff going on in your head. You're not going to suddenly forget all your interview examples, but you do need time away from it. That's just as important as well, because I've seen people completely overdo it. I've overdone it before, and you get to the point, I mean, I remember like being on the train and you're kind of rattling through all your paperwork and all your interview notes, just, all the stuff you've done in your STAR method, and it's just going in your eye. You're reading it, but it's just going out your head straight away because you've just overdone it. You can't absorb any more information. It's just like, no, the hard drive's full. It's not taking any more info. So I think it's important as well to reiterate, again, mindfulness can help with that. Take the focus away from the interview and the stress and worry and the anxiety you've got around that, and just take some time out, chill out for a bit. So
let's face it, right? If you're on the way to doing your interview and you're still rattling through your notes, you're still doing that, you're not going to gain anything from that. All it's going to do is make you stressed and disrupt that kind of nice build-up routine that we've spoken about. Again, that's another good point that you made there, though, about leaving enough time to get to the interview, so you are not absolutely stressed out of having missed the train or whatever, because you've left enough time to accommodate for that. But yeah, that's another thing to think about. But yeah, it's definitely, if you do not want to be turning up to an interview not prepared, trying to learn a million things, it's just not going to work. And anyone that says to you, whilst we're on the topic, Ash, I think this is a good place to put it. Anyone that says to you, yeah, I just read some notes 10 minutes before it and I winged it. We don't like that word, do we, Ash, in this Grad Guys? We don't like the term winged it.
It's total BS. There is no way you can wing it. Anyone that says that is completely lying, right? And they're just trying to sound cool. I don't know what they're trying to sound like, but to me personally, they just sound like an idiot, because there's no way you just physically cannot like excel at an interview like winging it. It just doesn't work. If you've not prepped, how do you even know how do you even know what job you're going for, B, the culture and all the stuff we'll get talking about on other episodes of the company, or even what questions they potentially going to ask. You just can't do it. It's complete rubbish.
And like, let's be honest, it's like do you like the amount of achievement that I've felt when I've sufficiently prepared for an interview? I've done my mindfulness, I've done my interview preparation. Like, it's an amazing feeling when you get that job. Like, isn't it? It's an amazing feeling because you know you've put everything in. You've earned it. Yeah. You don't want to. You do not want to. Like, you don't want to have an empty win where, like, even if that was the case where the person has rocked up and done this and they've somehow winged it, which they haven't. But even if it was the case, well, they wouldn't have that sense of achievement that if you've done all the preparation you can, that you would have, because you've earned it. Like you said, you've earned that right to say thanks very much. I'll accept that job. And there's no way to start a career with that attitude either.
No, it comes across. It's going to come across. I mean, we've interviewed people where it comes across, and the arrogance or the lack of preparation, it comes across. And ultimately, do you want someone like that working for you or your organisation? Of course you don't.
Exactly.
So, doing these things, embracing the mindfulness, doing lots of prep, all that kind of stuff, it's all going to culminate and converge in that interview and come across so well. And it's a chance for you to shine. It's a chance for you to sell yourself. And like you say, get that job that you deserve. I think one thing that you've just made me think about is really, and this does link back to mindfulness, is literally only worrying about things that you can control.
Definitely.
Now, I mean, it might sound quite obvious, but I think it's more common than we might think. It's all too easy to worry about things like, oh, how good are the other candidates? Will the interviewers like me? Like you say, what if my train's late on the day? Like, you can't change those things, can you? So just let go of them. Like, don't let that add to your worry. Like, there's enough to prepare for as it is. Don't add more stress and worry onto what's already a stressful situation. What you should be doing is look at those issues and focus on the ones you can control, and then almost flipping them over and looking at what the opposite of that is. So what is the thing that's going to calm your nerves, your worry and your anxiety? So, I mean, if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I'm worried I'm not prepared, well, then the chances are you're probably not prepared. So get prepared. You know, if you're worried about the train being late, like we said, then get there early. Plan your route in advance, add some contingency into your plans. Look at alternative routes. If it means you book a hotel room the night before because you're traveling down from Manchester, or if you've got an interview in London, well, then do that. If you want the job that bad, you've got to do it. You've got to get a grip of these things that you can influence and affect control over. I think that's really important. Anyway, that's my rant over, but I think it's really important.
It's a really important point. I love that. It's a really important point. You can only control what you can control. It's like, you might get a scenario afterwards where people were trying to undermine your confidence. It's like, well, if you know that you've done the best that you can, they can't undermine you, can they? Like, if someone, it's like when you have a test or exam at school or university and people say, oh yeah, I smashed that. Did you do this on that question? Who cares what they did? Who cares? I don't care what. If someone says that to me, I said, it's nothing, none of your business what I said. It's like, it's your interview. That's it. Don't worry about, like, if you turn up and you look at other people and they seem calm on the surface, I bet they're like a duck. Like, they look calm on the surface, but their feet are paddling at 100 miles an hour underneath it. I've been guilty of it. Like, I've been looking at someone and think, wow, they are what I want to be. They're calm, they're collected. Absolute nonsense. They're as nervous as you are. Because they're probably looking at you thinking exactly the same thing. You focus. It's such an important point that actually you can only control what you can control, and you focus on what you are going to do in interview. That's what all you need to do is focus on your interview. You can't control what anyone else thinks. You can't control what anyone else does or thinks. It's just what you can do. Really excellent point.
Yeah, and that links back nicely to the mindfulness. When you were talking about the negative self-talk and stuff like that, and replacing those negative thoughts with the positive ones. So if you are thinking about that, then start replacing those thoughts with more positive ones, such as, I can't control what other candidates do. I can only focus on what I'm doing. So, you need to replace those thoughts. So if one of them is, oh, I'm worried if they were like, don't think like that. You need to, like we say, flip it on its side. So really, really, really important stuff. So I think we've covered a lot of ground there. I know we kind of once you get into the mindfulness, so you go down a bit of a rabbit hole and you sort of go all over. But it is a really massive topic, and hopefully we've kind of covered a little bit you're giving it, done it a bit of justice here about how it links to interviews and how it can really help you. I'm sure we'll cover it in a bit more detail and maybe focus on specific areas on future podcasts as well. And we'll also make sure that, some of the things we've spoken about, the breathing exercise, all that kind of stuff, we'll make sure that some of those resources are put on our Facebook community. So if you're not already a member of our Facebook community, then you can join at facebook.com/groups/the Grad Guys. So it's facebook.com/groups/the Grad Guys. And ultimately, we're here to help you interview with confidence. Take on board what we've said, get on the groups, comment. If you like this show, please share it with your friends and family or whoever's going to benefit from this. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
We hope you found today's episode useful. If you did, then please be sure to leave a review, share, and subscribe. You can also join our Facebook community by searching The Grad Guys and also by checking out thegradguys.com. See you next time.